The United States has been a leader in weapon development for a long time. The other powers have tried to get close to the U.S. level of capabilities, but it starts taking measures to preserve its superiority. The most noteworthy development in the U.S. defense industry is the establishment of the B-52 bomber, which is the most fearsome weapon in the arsenal. Join us as we get into the details of its capabilities and how important it is for the USAF. The B-52, or the Stratofortress, came into being in the 1960s as the replacement for the B-36 Peacemaker. It has served the U.S. Air Force since 1955 and is famous for its qualities and reputation of being massive. The B-52 was equipped with a 5 or more member turret gunner crew and a 6-man relief crew. It had a cruising speed of 100 miles per hour at 34,000 feet and a combat radius of 5,000 miles. Boeing was awarded the contract to build a version of the B-52, a straight-wing aircraft, which had 6 Wright T-35 turboprops. At the start, it was all about the size of the plane and its ability to meet the standards of the design. Boeing's response was the Model 464, a smaller 4-engine version, which was deemed acceptable. The B-52 was the only aircraft in the USAF that could exceed 298 miles per hour and have a range of more than 5,000 miles. It was nicknamed the Stratofortress, which signifies its status as a fortress in the sky. The B-52 bomber was also used to transport weapons across continents, to fly over the North Pole, and to undertake extremely long missions of up to 20,000 miles. The 464-49 was the final version of the B-52, which was unveiled by Boeing in October 1948 and was powered by 8 Pratt & Whitney JT3 turbojets, later designated as J-57. These engines were more fuel-efficient than their predecessors. Nevertheless, the B-52H bomber was later modified to feature Pratt & Whitney TF-33P3 turbofan engines, which are more efficient and consume less fuel. In April 1952, the USSR became the first country to develop its first atomic bomb, and it took another 3 years for the first B-52 to enter service in January 1957. In January 1957, U.S. Air Force demonstrated the extended air refueling capabilities during Operation Power Flight, demonstrating that the nuclear weapons could be deployed globally. During this flight, 3 B-52 aircraft flew 24,356 miles without refueling, averaging a speed of 525 miles per hour in 45 hours and 19 minutes. The B-52 was structurally similar to its predecessor, the B-47, both of which had swept wings and potted jet engines. The crew's ejection systems were similar, with pilots and operators ejecting upwards, and lower deck crew ejecting downwards. To begin with, the tail gunner was in the tail, armed with visual and radar gun-laying systems. In later models, the gunner was moved to the front of the plane using radar to aim the gun, similar to the B-58 Hustler's system. B-52 also faced structural problems, particularly at low altitudes, which resulted in quick structural fatigue and costly repairs. The program thus consisted of 3 phases of high stress, which were initiated in the early 1960s, the first phase being at 2,000 flying hours. A number of other programs were also initiated to extend the service life of some of the selected airframes for an additional 200 hours, while the Pacer Plank reskinning project was completed in 1977. The addition of an extra wing in the G and H models made them more vulnerable to fatigue, with an increase of 60% of the stress on flight compared to the older models. The wings were corrected and modified in 1964, but the skin and longerons were replaced in 1964 to avoid the mentioned problems. Yet another challenge was fuel leakages caused by the Marmon clamps wearing out, an issue which continued to be present throughout their service. B-52 has evolved with the help of programs such as Hardshell Blue Band and Quick Clip. The Quick Clip safety straps, among other innovations, were the most important in preventing the fuel from leaking out in case of clamp failure. In spite of the official service ceiling of 50,000 feet, the aircraft was found to have a performance degradation factor when it was fully loaded with bombs, and the best combat altitude was found to be around 43,000 feet to maintain range. A key characteristic is the possibility of mounting weapons and electronics on it. Its original design had it as a glider, but it then became the mainstay of the U.S. nuclear arsenal during the Cold War, and it was planned for decades of operation. Its subsonic speed, however, hampered its effectiveness in an environment of airspace contests. However, the advent of nuclear-powered cruise missiles extended its service life, which in turn secured its place in the U.S. nuclear triad. Stunningly, the B-52 is the only aircraft in service with 8 Pratt & Whitney turbojets and able to carry up to 70,000 pounds of ammunition for a range of 8,800 miles without refueling. In 2006, the aircraft became one of the first U.S. military vehicles that used blended synthetic and regular jet fuel, displaying its ability to adapt and to be fuel efficient. The B-52 bomber is not a high-speed aircraft with a lot of maneuverability. Its narrow rudder is not capable of steering the ship precisely. At the beginning of the process, the developers thought about the movable tail, but they decided to abandon this idea because of the efficiency issues. Nevertheless, the airplane is fitted with 8 engines to continue operation even if one of them fails in the flight, thus avoiding any disaster eventualities. The crosswinds help in takeoff and landing, and the landing gear can turn up to 20 degrees towards left or right, just like the rudder. The elevator on the B-52 is small and it does not provide enough control power. The stabilizer, however, performs the role of controlling pitch and speed, and the elevator is just for minor adjustments when the stabilizer is in a specific position. This flexibility is of great importance to ensure smooth takeoff and landing, as flap can alter the jet's pitch appropriately. Previously, the B-52's small ailerons, which were connected to the pilot's control yoke, provided feedback for precise operations such as aerial refueling. Traditional ailerons were replaced by spoilerons, which function as spoilers on the wings for turning control. The purpose of this is to avoid breaking the integrity of the wing. The Jollywell program was 1964 and it targeted avionics issues, thus improving the bombing navigational and terrain computers. By 1965, almost all the planes were able to detect the malfunctions and record the failures. The ASQ-151 electro-optical viewing system, installed from 1972 to 1976, expanded the capabilities of night flying at low altitude. After that, a GPS navigation system and the Lightning targeting pod in 2007 were added for the purpose of improving ground target attacks. The pod is guided by a laser and features high-resolution sensors for accurate targeting. The B-52 is equipped with 20 AGM-69 SRAM nuclear missiles on G and H versions of the plane, thus increasing its firepower. The very first major redesign of the B-52 was done in 1971, whereby the aircraft was fitted with air-launched cruise missiles to enhance its offensive potential. The projectile for the B-52 was an 86B missile after testing different ones. The B-52Gs and Hs were modified to carry AGM-86 missiles on underwing pylons, while the B-52Gs were modified to carry an additional 8 missiles on a rotary launcher in the bomb bay, in accordance with the SALT II treaty. The concept was to replace AGM-86 with the cheaper, stealthier AGM-129 ACM, but only 450 were produced due to high costs and the end of the Cold War. As opposed to the AGM-86, which had a non-nuclear version, the AGM-129 ACM did not. The B-52 aircraft modification to use the AGM-137 TSM weapon were cancelled due to development costs. The B-52Gs that were left unmodified to carry cruise missiles went through modifications to improve their already impressive bombing capabilities. They were now outfitted with a new system called the Integrated Conventional Stores Management System, and they had new pylons under each of the wings to carry bigger bombs or other weapons. Some B-52Gs were converted into planes that carried up to 12 AGM-84, Harpoon anti-ship missiles, and others were modified into planes with AGM-142, HAVNAP standoff air-to-ground missiles. The B-52H bomber was upgraded with a number of modifications, including the Conventional Enhancement Modification Program that allowed it to carry the JDAM and AGM-154 glide bombs on pylons under the wings. In 2010, the B-52 was out of the list of the aircraft to carry the nuclear gravity bombs, the role of which was given to the B-2 because it was considered to be vulnerable against modern air defense systems. The missile load for the B-52 was changed to include nuclear cruise missiles. and it still carried out its role of conventional strikes. In 2016, Boeing made modifications to the internal rotary launchers of the B-52 and introduced smart bombs that can be carried inside. The B-1 Lancer's potential to lift more weight becomes a theoretical one, as both bombers usually do not carry their full load. At the maximum weight, the B-52 can carry a full set of AGM-86Bs, the total of which weighs 62,600 pounds. In March of 1999, Allies used B-52 bombers to hit Serbian targets, including the Battle of Kosovo. The B-52 was a good aircraft for ocean surveillance, and it helped the Navy in anti-ship and sea mine deployment operations. In 2018, during Baltops exercise, B-52 bombers engaged in combat against enemy amphibious invasion in the Baltic Sea. The B-52H has been modified since the 1980s to accommodate harpoons, a variety of cruise missiles, bombs, and unguided munitions. Recent Chinese fleet expansions have led to the Air Force certification of the B-52 fleet to use quick-strike sea mines with the JDAMER kit, which gives the ability to mine large areas accurately. As well, the AN/ASQ-236 Dragoneye underwing capsule is able to quickly scan for enemy ships in the Pacific Ocean. Upcoming release of this aircraft version will be J-series bombs capable of carrying up to 8 bombs and 6 more bombs under each wing. The cockpit display and radar systems will be upgraded, and the hypersonic weapons will be integrated as well. In addition to the continuation of the long-range strike bomber program, the B-52H was also granted an extension of its service life until 2045, which makes it the longest-serving weapon ever to be recorded in the history of weaponry. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and watch the next video as well. See you again.